Hey ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Anderson coming to you live today. We've got an opportunity to talk about section 6.2.1 from our CPM ebook. Continue with some of the discussion regarding scatter plots, modeling, bivariate data or two-variable data. And today specifically we're going to talk about the residuals and what the residuals do for us and what they mean. Everything I'm going to be doing today is a continuation of our last 6.2.1 lesson. I am going to apologize. I'm at a tennis arena where they're playing some tennis and pickleball. So what you hear is some music and some instruction. Just happened to be convenient for me to be able to record a couple of lessons here. So we're going to start with problem 6-50. And 6-50 says, help Juliana realize the residuals for the pizza parlors. And problem 6-48 is described below. Explore using the e-tool. The e-tool is really going to be powerful here, but before we talk about it, let's back up and just quickly review 6-48 to talk about what's going on with Juliana's pizza parlor residuals here. Her father would like to open a restaurant and deciding how much to charge for pizza toppings. He sent Julia 8 different Italian restaurants around town to find out how much they each charge. She returned with the following information. So all 8 different restaurants, the number of toppings on the pizzas, and then the cost for the pizzas, okay? I took this data and I already put it into our notes, but there's data we're going to be missing that we're going to pull from the Desmos e-tool. So I'm going to start by clicking on this 6-50 Desmos e-tool here, and when I do, this is perfect. I can see the data. That's what we always want to be able to do. And what I notice right away is it kind of looks like I've got a model that increases or trends upward as we move from left to right. And what that means to me is the number of toppings goes up, so does the cost. But I'm kind of questioning whether or not I've got the ability to use well a linear model here, because maybe there's a little curve in my data. I don't know, and the residuals are really going to help me see that. Okay, if the linear model is going to be an appropriate one for making a prediction. Okay, so we've got that going on there, and then I've got the data listed all over here. Everything is set up really gosh darn well. Now, in my notes, I copied the data here. It says mark the residuals on the scatter plot you created. Okay. If you want to purchase an inexpensive pizza, should you go to a store with a positive or negative residual? Well, technology really helps us do this, and I can do this by going and using that e-tool. I can scroll down here, and there's a piece here that has an LSRL, and I can plot my residuals. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on plot here, and it shows me. I'm just going to take this graph and move it up. It shows me those residuals. Okay, so all my black dots are my actual factual data, but these blue dots are my residuals. Okay, now again, this is using a linear model. I can turn that linear model on and off using Desmos. There you go. I can see that linear Desmos model. Okay, turned on, and what we can see here, I've got a pizza topping, or I'm sorry, a pizza with 0 toppings, cost me $8, and it looks like it would be slightly above the price predicted by our model, and hence we see that residual, 25-ish, almost 26 cents above the predicted cost by our model. Okay, check this guy out. Here, 1 topping pizza for $10.50, and according to that residual, well, that looks like it's about $1.40 more than our model predicts. Okay. Right here, I've got a 2 topping pizza for $9. This is actual data, right? That was that looks like the House of Pizza Pie, right? 2 topping pizza for $9, and that, according to our model, is about $1.46 under what our model predicts. Okay, and so we can see all this information. Here, I've got 2 pieces of data with 3 toppings. I've got one for $12.50, one for $9. Our model uses both of those, and the one for $12.50 is 69 cents over, and the one for $9 is looks like about $2.81 under the prediction. And so we're going to take this and we're going to use this to answer the question: it says if you want to purchase an inexpensive, pizza, right? We all want to save money. Should you go to a store with a positive or negative residual? And the key here for us is going to be negative. And why? Because it's under the predicted value as predicted by our model. Okay, and that's a pretty big deal. If it has a positive residual, it's going to be over the predicted value as predicted by our model, and this kind of changes with the context. So just be aware of that. All right, we've got to go ahead and make sure we take that into account, right? If it's a situation where a positive residual might be beneficial, right? Like maybe job earnings, right? Then I want to maybe look the other way with the context. Okay. Part B is pretty important. It says, what is the sum of the residuals? Are you surprised by this result? Let's talk about how we get this, and then we're going to talk about what it means and why it's important. The sum of the residuals I can do with my Desmos machine here. I had already clicked plot the residuals, and now I can go back up here and I can see all those residuals. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them and I'm going to copy them onto our notes. I'm going to pause the video, copy them onto our notes, and then we're going to talk about them. And before I copy them, I'm going to round them each to the nearest cent. So give me 1 second to do that, and you guys can do the exact same thing. All right, so here's where I left you. I asked you to take all of these residuals, and I threw them on my my notes, and I'll show these to you guys in just a minute here. They're all here in purple. Just copied them right down next to the number of toppings and the cost. And I put a little spot down there for the sum. And some are positive, some are negative. And so realize there's the ability for some of these positives to be canceled out by its equal opposite, or especially when we take many, many of these things, for them to add to zero. Now, in this particular case, they do. And is that surprising? And I think the answer is no, because as I mentioned, look at how close some of these things are, right? There's an 83-cent residual. Here's a negative 88 cents. Now, do they perfectly cancel each other out? No, they don't. But we've got that LSRL, we've got that least squares regression model that kind of streams through the middle of our data. So we're going to have some that are positive and some that are negative. And in an ideal world, we've got a pretty gosh darn good model if we've got a sum of residuals that is zero. Now, there's another marker that we use, and maybe we're using a different course dealing with the residuals, but in this particular case, that is where we're at. Okay, so the sum is zero. Are we surprised? No, it's definitely a possibility. Okay, we did use the Desmos machine to make that residual plot. I'm not going to do this on our TI-84 machines, at least not today. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to talk about patterning and how it works with residuals. So I'm going to turn off just for a second the LSRL, and I'm going to turn off the line of fit. And so the only thing that we can see are our residuals. And here's the deal with residuals. When it comes to patterning, I ask a leading question here. Is there any visible pattern present? When it comes to patterning, what we want to see are residuals that look like a random scatter. Okay? I don't want to go above, below, above, below, above, below. I don't want to have that AB pattern. Okay? I don't want to have a curvature present in my residual pattern, a predictable curve. I want it to look like a pepper shaker. Like somebody took a white sheet of paper and they took a pepper shaker and they sprinkled that pepper out onto my white sheet of paper. That's what our residual plot should look like. And is this perfect? No, it's not, but it's pretty gosh darn good. Look what we've got. We've got 1 above, 2 below, then 3 above, then 1 below. Okay? And they're all pretty gosh darn nice and close to that x-axis, meaning our model is a pretty good model. Okay, so that's exactly what that means and exactly what that's going for. All right, that's what we want to see every single time. We're going to keep on keeping on here. I'm going to move on to number 51, and we're going to use another Desmos e-tool from our ebook. Okay, it says dry ice, frozen CO2 or carbon dioxide has the unusual property of sublimating, changing directly from a solid to a gas. Juliana's father uses dry ice to keep the glasses in the restaurant cold. Since dry ice sublimates in the restaurant cooler, Juliana was curious how long a piece of dry ice would last. So she collects the following data. She sketches the LSRL, and we have this data available to us from our e-tool. We're going to use the Desmos e-tool to make that residual plot. I'll remind you that one more time. And we're going to see if a linear model is a good fit, right? Using that framework of those ideas that we just developed on the previous problem, okay? And then we're going to make a little bit of an assertion about what we might be able to conjecture about the shape of the dry ice model. So I back up to 6-51 and I click on that e-tool, and I'll remind you of some of these toggles. First and foremost, before I do that, let's just take a peek at this. This looks pretty gosh darn linear. Like, I'm checking this out. This looks great. I'm thinking right now a linear model is going to be appropriate. However, further investigation is warranted here. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to turn on that residual plot, and then when I do that, I'm going to turn off my actual data. Okay, and I want to kind of zoom in on this, and I'll use my my settings in Desmos. Let's go from like -1 all the way, I think it goes to 10, so I can go to 11, and then, I don't know, these are pretty small. -1 to +1 is probably pretty good, and I can even turn projector mode on, so they kind of come out of this. Okay, now look what we've got here. We've got a situation where I've got 3 dots above. I start 3 dots above the x-axis, then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 below, and then 2 above. That looks like a situation where I've got some curvature happening. All right, I start above, I dip down below, and then I come back above. And in that scenario, it would not be appropriate to use a linear model because I've got a predictable residual pattern. If I had to bet, I can't say for sure. I don't know anything, any more data about the dry ice other than what I have right here. But what if I had 11? Well, I bet in this particular case I would have a positive residual, and what that would mean is I've got a predictable scenario. So the LSRL model may not be appropriate here. Another way to maybe think about this this situation and a linear model not being appropriate is, given we may not have a ton of experience with dry ice, but we all have quite a bit of experience with regular ice. Maybe you understand that the more surface area that ice has, the quicker it is going to melt, and so the larger mass we have, the larger mass we have, the longer it's going to take. But as ice melts, that mass shrinks. So we might be dealing with a little bit of an exponential right here. Tough for me to really know without collecting some of this stuff on my own. Okay. Couple review preview problems, folks. We've got 6-61 to 6-63. These are 1, 2, 3 problems, and remember, they are available in your CPM ebook at the bottom of the lesson, right? And because this was a 2-day lesson, you might have to scroll a little bit past that review preview symbol. So give these things a shot. It's going to let you know what kind of questions you have. And if you're asking those questions to your teachers, it's going to let your teachers know what kinds of things that he or she can do to help you put some of those questions to rest and help you seek some answers. So, ladies and gents, thanks for watching. Have a great day.